So let's welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. And just before we begin with our Public Works and Finance, we're going to swear in the new fire chief, and we will yield the floor this time to Judge Tony Bradley Smith.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Raise your right hand. I, Jody Moore,
I, Jody Moore,
as the Fire Chief of the City of Muskogee,
as the Fire Chief of the City of Muskogee,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma.
and I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties of Fire Chief of the City of Muskogee,
discharge the duties of Fire Chief of the City of Muskogee.
and I pledge to carry out the duties of Fire Chief
I pledge to carry out the duties of Fire Chief
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
and I will honor and respect
and I will honor and respect
the missions, goals, purposes, and policies
the missions, goals, purposes, and policies
of the Muskogee Fire Department,
of the Muskogee Fire Department,
and I recognize the badge of my office
and I recognize the badge of my office
as a symbol of public faith and trust,
as a symbol of public faith and trust,
and I will uphold the ethics of this department in this city,
and I will uphold the ethics of this department and this city,
and I make these promises
and I make these promises
solemnly, freely, and upon my honor.
solemnly, freely, and upon my honor.
That's it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Judge Smith.
Thank you. We will now call to order the Finance Committee meeting for August the 16th, 2021. We will start out tonight's meeting with invocation being led by Councilor Tracy McGee, followed by the flag salute. If we'll stand at this time.
Let us all bow hearts and minds for a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, Yahweh, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. Guide us tonight as we handle the business of the city. Let us have an open mind and an open heart to receive the things that come out tonight. And we ask you that your will be done in each and every one of us. We ask this in only your precious Son, Yahshua. Let us say hallelujah.
Flag salute at this time. Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda item number 1, please.
Consider approval of Finance Committee minutes of August 2nd, 2021, or take other necessary action.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve our minutes. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee,
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan,
Yes.
Alex Reynolds,
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs,
Yes.
Jamie Stout,
Yes.
Ivory Van,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed,
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 1 passes. Item number 2, please.
Consider approval of an addendum to retainer agreement for professional services with Animal Medical Center dated June 12, 2017, modifying the rate charged for spay, neuter, and other services, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Evans.
Yes, Councilors. In front of you is an addendum to a retainer agreement that was previously dated June of 2017. This is a retainer agreement that the city has between us and the Animal Medical Center. They perform our spay and neuter services for animals in possession of the city. As you recall, all animals that we adopt out or go to rescue have to be spayed or neutered before they leave our facility. This addendum reflects changes in prices primarily, but from the original agreement also changes some wording in there, such as it used to be under the police department, now it's under me as community services supervisor, and some payment options in there. Staff recommends approval.
Move for approval. Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve this agenda item. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 2 passes. Item number 3, please.
Consider approval of a retainer agreement for professional services with the Oklahoma Humane Society for veterinary services, specifically spay and neutering of cats and dogs for the Spay and Neuter Assistance Program, as outlined in ordinance number 4088A, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, so this retainer agreement is very similar to the one that we just modified. This is a retainer agreement between the City of Muskogee and the Oklahoma Humane Society, who will be performing the spay and neuters at our facility. If you recall, we passed an ordinance a year or so ago that we will perform spay and neuters at our facility, at our new animal shelter that we built. So the Oklahoma Humane Society will be the party that performs those services at our shelter. The pricing is attached here in this. And like I said, this is very similar to the retainer agreement that we already have to perform spay and neuter services on our animals. The only difference is this would be for the citizens' animals, and we recommend approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Evans?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve this agenda item. Any further discussion?
Is that going to be a cost to the citizens?
So it's a two-tier option in the ordinance that's outlined in there. It's a no-cost tier that is eligible for all citizens of Muskogee that meet certain criteria, such as any state benefits, such as SNAP or WIC, any type of benefits from the state, and then there's a option for all residents will at least receive half off of the cost of those.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 3 passes. Item number 4, please.
Consider approval of resolution number 2863, adopting amendment to Appendix A of the Muskogee City Code pertaining to schedule of fees and charges per attached list, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Evans?
Yes, this resolution is in relation to the previous 2 retainer agreements that we just passed. This resolution will allow us to amend the prices in Appendix A, reflecting those said price changes in the previous 2 retainer agreements, and adding some pricing that was not currently in there related to our spay and neuter program for the public.
Questions for Mr. Evans?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 4 passes. Item number 5, please.
Consider approval to apply matching grant funds for the Roxy Theater Community Trust totaling $2,500, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, the City of Muskogee did approve a matching grant fund available to the Roxy Theater to match fundraising efforts for their capital programs and their ongoing operational programs. They did receive a Union Pacific grant in the amount of $2,500 for a camp that they put on for youth, and so we would like to apply matching funds to that, and that's what this agenda item is for. Happy to answer any questions, and we do recommend approval.
Any questions for Mr. Miller?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 5 passes. Item number 6, please.
Consider approval to accept the proposal from Digi Security Systems to replace the security camera system in the police department in an amount not to exceed $70,000, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Cummings?
All right, committee. This was a RFP that we put out to follow along and add security cameras to more facilities in the city of Muskogee. The committee that was chosen was made up of stakeholders of the facilities that we were trying to get cameras in, and the committee reviewed the RFPs and recommends selection of Digi Security Systems.
Move for
Questions Ms.
approval.
Cummings? Have a
Second.
motion? Did we get a second?
Second.
All righty. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Tracy McGee,
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 6 passes. Item number 7, please.
Receive report on the status of the condition of the Royal Casket Building located at 302 North Main, and if appropriate, provide any necessary direction to staff.
Mayor Coleman.
Mr. Chairman, if it will please you and the committee, we're going to take this item up as an emergency item on a separate agenda, and I will request that it be stricken and discussed at that time.
Thank you. With that being the case, item number 7 is stricken, and that ends our Finance Committee meeting for tonight.
Welcome to the Public Works Committee for August 16th, 2021. Item number 1.
Consider approval of Public Works Committee minutes of August 2nd, 2021, or take other necessary action.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Tracy McGee,
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item number 2.
Receive report on status of COVID-19 in Muskogee and take other necessary action.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got Tyler Evans here to give you a report. We had a brief report last week. There was a request to continue that and have a report this week as well. Mr. Evans has given you a written report, and I included a lot of the information that was most recent in my Friday report to Council. Mr. Evans will now give you any updates, and we can have any discussion or questions that you may desire.
Yes, Mayor, members of council, you should have the report similar to this in front of you. I'll go over some of the highlights, quick facts that we have from our latest reports from the state. The city of Muskogee, as of last Wednesday, had 304 active cases, which is up from 267 the week prior, and 140 deaths. This has added 5 additional deaths to the city of Muskogee total from the previous week. As of August 9th, Muskogee County is still in the orange category. According to the Oklahoma Department of Health risk level, we are currently at 60.7 cases per 100,000. The most concerning data that's attached in there, in my opinion, comes from the COVID-19 hospital admissions data. According to the epidemiology report as of August 9th, there have been 2,336 hospitalizations due to COVID-19. This is up from the previous week's number of 632 hospitalizations. That's an increase of 1,704 in a week. Out of the additional 1,704 cases, only one of those was vaccinated. The remaining 1,703 hospital admissions were unvaccinated admissions. This means out of the 2,336 hospitalizations, 93.4% of them were unvaccinated. I did break this down into age groups a little bit. For the age groups 18 through 35, 278 hospitalizations occurred. 274, or 98.5%, were unvaccinated individuals. For the age group 36 through 49, 466 hospitalizations occurred, with 459 of those, or 98.4%, being unvaccinated individuals. The data is showing that the overwhelming majority of people that are in the hospitals due to COVID-19 are unvaccinated. The recent 3-day average hospitalization data shows 1,300 hospitalizations, with 341 of those in ICU, and 51 of those are pediatric admissions. Attached to your front page there on the following pages are City of Muskogee active cases line graph, the orange risk level chart that is referred to from the Oklahoma State Department of Health, and like I say, some vaccine data. The hospital admissions data is also attached. The graphs and the data are showing that admissions are going up, cases are going up, and deaths are also going up. One of the more concerning graphs that's attached here is called the COVID-19 related emergency department visits. As you can see, the number of visits to our hospitals, to our emergency rooms, continues to climb, and this goes all the way back to last year, and we're at a higher level now than we were in the previous year. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Tyler, are all 16 beds full at the hospital?
That I cannot answer, but the last time I checked, which was sometime last week, they were.
All full.
Yeah, they tend to remain full this time. Very rarely do we find an empty ICU bed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. Or
Yes.
thank you, Tyler.
Yes, ma'am. And that concludes my report.
Mayor, I have nothing else to report at this time.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
I just have, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Mr. Evans, I'm sorry, I should have asked this while you were standing up. So between last week and this week, we have 5 new COVID deaths, or do we have?
That was at least the 5 deaths that was added to our total. When exactly those occurred, whether it's over the last week or last couple of weeks, as we've stated
Okay.
previously, there may be a lapse in adding those. I cannot tell you exactly when those 5 occurred, but 5 have been added to our total from last week.
That's right, because the state, the way they're reported, we don't have the daily tabulations. They only
Correct.
do them.
Unfortunately, what we're working with on the city and county level is the once-a-week reports on Wednesdays.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Tyler, I just had a question. Now, this hospitalization, is this Muskogee?
No, so this will be statewide hospitalization data,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
No, I'm chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No action on that. Item number 3, please.
Consider approval of resolution number 2870, declaring 60 two-yard dumpsters to be surplus to the needs of the city and authorizing the city manager to dispose of the same or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes, Madam Chairman and committee. We are currently in the process of cleaning up our material yard. And in doing so, we have discovered that we have quite a few two-yard dumpsters down there that need to be disposed of. Now, these are dumpsters that cannot be repaired. And the two-yard dumpsters, just so you know, are the commercial dumpsters that the city has that are rear load and they're beige in color. And that's the only commercial size dumpster that we have. We are asking that they be declared surplus. We will have them recycled or repurposed, or not repurposed, but recycled, and whatever money that we get from that will go back into general fund. So we're asking that you pass this resolution, and I'll answer any of your questions.
Move for approval?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item number 4.
Consider approval to remove the traffic signals at 7th and Broadway Streets, replacing them with four-way stop signs as recommended by traffic engineering consultants, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes, Madam Chairman and committee, I'm going to have Morris Baxter, our traffic signal foreman, go through a brief PowerPoint with you and show you what we currently have there, and then I'll follow it up.
Mayor, council. We have, the traffic signal's been in since 1984. I got a trouble call last of May, and it was flashing. When I got there, I went through my formal routine of checking the equipment and everything, and it still wouldn't work. This is part of the reason that it wouldn't work. The wiring is just so old that it's just falling apart. So I pulled a hand cover, and the same thing. The insulation's brittle, it's falling off. And at that time, when I saw this, I decided to have four-way stop put up because it wasn't safe like this. Because if any of the wires got together, they would all flash together. Right now, we have stop signs at 7th and Broadway. We have a tech did an engineering study for us, and Mike will get into that a little bit more. And this is what he is proposing, where the bike lanes north of Court that are designated bike lanes. Between Court and Muskogee, they're sharrows. And you can see the sharrows on the street. And that is at Muskogee on the north side. What this will do, this will be Muskogee on the north side when it's restriped. And it'll be a designated bike lane because we have enough room to add that in there. So that will take the designated bike lane from Court down to Old Muskogee.
So when Mr. Baxter found it to be in that bad a shape, we approached the city manager and we're authorized to go ahead and get Traffic Engineering Consultants, TEC, to do a warrant study on that intersection to see if it actually met any of the warrants for a traffic signal. At this time, it does not. So because it doesn't meet the traffic signal warrants and because a four-way stop is working very well down there right now, we took it to the street committee and had the street committee approve the removal. I will tell you that we're going to put up 36-inch stop signs, the LED flashing stop signs. We are going to script stop on the street as well. And Morris laid a handout in front of you. I hope all of you have it. That will actually show you how the striping will be completed down there. We intend to do the majority of this work in-house, so there's very little expenditure out of it. We think we're probably going to be somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 is what the expense will be. But that's us doing the striping and us putting the stop signs up. So we do recommend approval of changing this from a signalized intersection to a four-way stop. And I'll answer any of your questions if you have them, or get Morris to assist me.
Move for approval?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee,
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the item passes. Item number 5, please.
Consider approval of an interagency contract between the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality and the City of Muskogee for the provision of a household waste collection event in an amount not to exceed $30,000 or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes, Abby Wright would have been here today, but she couldn't. She had some family issues that came up she had to take care of, so I'm going to present it for her. But I'm very pleased that Karen and Abby have found a grant for $30,000 that will pay for one of our household pollutant events. So that will be $30,000 that we have already budgeted in the stormwater account that we won't have to spend. This is a reimbursable grant, so we'll have to pay it and then we'll get reimbursed, and that $30,000 will go back into the stormwater account. We have to use this by June 30th of 2022, but we do have an October event coming up, so we intend to use it for that event. This is with ODEQ. This is up to $30,000. And one of the requirements is that whoever is doing our event, and Tredebi is the company that we have on contract, has to be R2 certified, which simply means a reasonable, a reliable, responsible recycler, and that they're going to take it to a proper disposal site. So they do have their certification, so everything is in order for this. So we do recommend approval, and very happy of my staff for finding this grant.
Move for approval?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item number 6.
Consider approval of an interlocal agreement between the City of Muskogee and the Board of County Commissioners for Muskogee County for street improvements to 53rd Street South or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, as you are well aware, we're doing a couple of these interlocal agreements with the county on some different road projects in the past, and this is just another one we're bringing before you. Mr. Miller had asked that I get with Commissioner Doak and Bob Burgess, his road foreman or superintendent, and try to work this out, and we have. What we have before you is a not-to-exceed amount of $45,000 that will have the county do the repair work, and then also they will put the overlay on the street. I will tell you that the city has 25% of that road between Gulick and Main Street. We have the south side, so if you're going down Main and you turn back to the east, we have that half mile that's on the south side from the center line over, and that is our share. But it's a not-to-exceed amount of $45,000, and we do recommend approval. And by the way, the street is very much in need of this repair.
Move for approval?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion?
One thing, Madam Chair, that I want to add, in conversations with the Assistant Attorney Generals who review these, they have indicated that if we make an appropriate citation, particularly appropriate statutory citation, referencing that it is related to governmental services, then it does not require approval from the Attorney General's office prior to its effectiveness. So what we will be doing before this is ultimately approved at council next week is revising that agreement to include the appropriate citations and removing the requirement that the Attorney General approve it first. So that'll help speed things along by about 6 weeks. So just FYI, if that is approved, it'll still be on consent agenda, but we'll just substitute a revised agreement.
Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the item passes. Item number 7.
Consider approval of lowest and best bid to Darris Contractors LLC in the amount of $1,207,200 for raw water pump station rehabilitation or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm going to have Mr. Reeves address this issue with you. He's prepared.
Good evening. Raw water pump station rehabilitation bids were taken for the Fort Gibson Dam. The low bidder on the project was Darris LLC Contractors, and the bid was $1,2702,000. The Hub Engineering was the engineering of record on the project, and they did recommend Darris Contractors for this contract. We will have the motors replaced, the pumps replaced, and control panels. The building will be rehabbed, new HVAC system, and the duration of the project is 270 days. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. We do recommend approval.
Motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item number 8.
Consider approval of the appointment of Bill Shelby to the Muskogee Industrial Trust to serve a 6-year term, filling the expired term of Billy Taylor, beginning August 1, 2021, and ending July 31, 2027, or take other necessary action.
Mayor Coleman.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, this is my recommendation. Bill Shelby is the Executive Vice President of Armstrong Bank. He's replacing one of his peers at that institution. The Muskogee Industrial Trust in times past has been a valuable asset to the city in terms of financing and supporting projects, and we're happy to see that that entity is still in existence. And with that said, I recommend approval.
I second. Bill's will be a great asset to that board.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item number 9.
Consider approval of the appointment of Dorian Scotto to the Board of Adjustment to serve a 3-year term, filling the expired term of Russell Sane, beginning October 1, 2021, and ending September 30, 2024, or take other necessary action.
Councilor Morgan.
Yes, I do believe that Dorian would make a very good asset to this board, and he is here if you have any questions. I move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item number 10.
Consider approval of the appointment of Robin Hopkins to the City Facilities Board to serve a 5-year term, filling the expired term of Perlin Boyata Craig, beginning August 1, 2021, and ending July 31, 2026, or take other necessary action.
Councilman Reynolds.
Madam Chair and the committee, this is my item. I would like to appoint
Robin Hopkins to the City Facilities Board.
Have a motion?
And make a motion
Second.
to do so.
And a second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item 11, please.
Consider approval of the appointment of Tracy Cole to the Muskogee Tourism Authority Board to serve a 5-year term, filling the expired term of Marlon Coleman, beginning August 1, 2021, and ending on July 31, 2026, or take other necessary action.
Deputy Mayor Reed.
Yes, I would like to make a motion for Tracy Cole for Muskogee Tourism Authority.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And that concludes our agenda. We are now adjourned.
We will now call to order the special emergency call meeting for the Muskogee City Council for August 16th, 2021. Just before we go into roll call, I'm going to ask Mr. Tucker to give us the explanation for why we are authorized to call an emergency meeting on tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, this emergency meeting has been called for the purposes of dealing with the Royal Casket Building, which collapsed late Friday night. Now, while the city has undertaken efforts to reduce the danger caused by the collapse by attempting to prevent further collapse, the site itself remains unsafe and further emergency action is necessary to be authorized and undertaken by the city. Number one, to reduce the likelihood of injury. Number two, the likelihood of further damage to public and private property. As a result, this meets the statutory definition of an emergency meeting as defined by the Oklahoma Open Meeting Act. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Roll call.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Jamie Stout.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Here.
Alex Reynolds.
Here.
Stephanie Morgan.
Here.
Tracy McGee.
Here.
Tracy Hoos.
Item number 1.
Consider approval of emergency resolution number 2871 relating to the collapse of the building located at 302 North Main Street, authorizing entry onto private and public property, authorizing abatement of nuisance as allowed under City Code Section 38-9, suspending all purchasing procedures of the city where necessary, allowing use of restricted reserve funds for the purpose of nuisance abatement at 302 North Main Street, or take other necessary action.
Just before I turn this section of the agenda over to Mr. Miller, let me first take the opportunity to salute and thank all of our first responders because they were on call immediately when citizens began to report that they had reason to believe that the structure was collapsing from the inside. Many of them were there late Friday night into Saturday and even beyond until the work of the emergency had been completed. So certainly we are so grateful to them. Let me also say to the residents of Muskogee, I don't recall any time in any city I've lived in where one council, being this body on tonight, has had to deal with so many back-to-back emergency items. Many of us were here in service to survive the flood. We were here to survive the pandemic. We witnessed the ice storm that took place during the pandemic. We had to issue emergency street repairs funds because the streets were in such disarray after the ice storm. We were very unfortunate to have lived through the shooting of 5 innocent children and an adult male. We also have now witnessed the advent of pandemic 2.0, now known as the Delta variant. And today we're dealing with a building that has long-term sentimental value that collapsed from the inside out, being the Royal Casket Building. I want to say to those who are watching tonight and those who may comment after this meeting is over, it certainly was no one's intention on this council to see that building in the condition that it is today. A gentleman had the opportunity to engage me in conversation over the weekend who had the notion initially that the city initiated demolition of this structure. The truth of the matter is that the structure collapsed from the inside out. If there were funds available to restore every single historic building in the city of Muskogee, particularly in the downtown area, municipalities across the globe would engage in using those resources to be able to do that. The truth of the matter is, when we look at historic preservation from a federal financial perspective, much of that budget has been a zero-item line budget since the middle of the first term of George W. Bush, who took office in 2000. And so we want to say to those residents who have questions and concerns, things that we can control, we do. Things that are of act of nature or act of God, all we can do on our best day is respond. Today, what we're doing is responding to what is something that no one wanted to deal with, yet in many parts of the city needed to be done. And so we ask for patience, not only from our residents, but patience with our council as we move forward to try to make Muskogee great. I shared with someone on the other day, in my 13-month tenure to date as mayor of the city of Muskogee, we have been in response mode to many emergencies and pandemics, but for the most part, this council has responded well. They have responded in the best interest of the city. They have responded with the resources that they had. They have responded with the skill set that we didn't know we had inside of us, and that is the intestinal fortitude to be certain that Muskogee continues. So to my council, to the staff, the city manager, attorney, clerk, and all of those involved at different levels of government, I personally say thank you, because we could not do what we do without the mindset to be able to survive the many tragedies that we have survived. Having said that, I will turn this over to Mr. Miller, and we will take comments to the emergency declaration after he makes his presentation.
Yes, thank you, sir, and well said. I did want to provide the council a summary update on the building collapse. Late Friday night, building at 302 North Main is private property, to what the mayor said. We do want people to take care of their own private property. That building does not have utility service. It's not occupied. It was condemned in 2016 when a portion of the east side of the building collapsed, and since that time, the owners filed bankruptcy, complicating our condemnation efforts. But on Friday night, about 11:30, Muskogee Police Department Sergeant Brian Wilkins was in the area of Main and Court Street, and he heard something falling inside the Royal Casket building. And officers blocked off the roads around the building. A short time later, the building did collapse. And so blocking Main Street and the bridge, the road that leads up to the bridge. I want to say that to say our Muskogee Police Department deserves an incredible amount of credit for recognizing a potential issue. And so when the building collapsed, there was no one driving down that street headed for it. And they took proactive steps to make sure that our community was safe, which we expect them to do, but this to me is above and beyond, and they deserve a lot of credit. A lot of you guys have seen the body cam video that I did send to the council and released to the public on Saturday. After the police had recognized the danger, they had blocked off the streets and were standing by, and just one of them happened to have their body camera on and pointed in that direction. And so it was a very scary event that could have been way scarier if it weren't for the great action of our Muskogee Police Department. I was called shortly thereafter, about 12:15 Saturday morning. I got there by about 12:30. Police, Public Works, Emergency Management, OG&E, they were already on the scene. They set up, did traffic control, site evaluation. The police on the site reported they didn't hear or see any sign of human occupation of that building and the collapsed structure. The fire department has since had trained dogs inspect the property and did not report any signs of people being in the building when it collapsed. The building, though, was in unstable and grave and immediate danger on Saturday morning, early Saturday morning. And given the instability of the structure, being unable to evaluate the structure in the dark, we reconvened about 7 a.m. But the police department did stay on the scene through the night. So by 8 o'clock, we had multiple contractors on site giving us ideas about how best to proceed. Based on equipment available on very short notice, the city approved Cook to perform the emergency demolition. They had a crane and a long-reach trackhoe on site very shortly. That allowed them to begin the demolition as soon as OG&E got the power turned off on some lines that were very, very close to the building. So we were able then to do emergency summary abatement, is what it's called, to get rid of the grave and immediate danger of the building continuing to fall into the street. So the structure that you see remaining today was deemed by an engineer on site to be structurally sound enough to not require summary abatement, and that's part of why we are here with an emergency meeting. So I've had several phone conversations with the property owner of record since Saturday morning. So she was served notice that we will be doing this, that we have done summary abatement, and given her time, 48 hours to abate the property herself, or we would have to begin that process for her. And so that's the process that we're in. Our next steps will be to identify funds for abatement. But I want to give you, turn this over now to Matt Beesey from the City Attorney's Office. He'll kind of talk about how we got here. We originally did have an agenda item scheduled to discuss the status of this building, and Matt was prepared to do that. He's still going to do that, give you the update on where we were leading up to Friday night and where we were with that building. So I'd like to ask him to come forward.
Before we go further, we've got something we need to correct. The agenda item that was read based upon what was passed out was not the one that was posted online. We have a revised one that was posted online, which has, the resolution number is the same, but the text of what the resolution is matches what was distributed to you all. So for purposes of the record, I'm going to ask the clerk to reread the agenda item, the corrected one that is, not corrected, but the one that was out online. This one that was passed out is not the correct version.
Madam Clerk?
Consider approval of resolution number 2871, confirming the collapsed structure commonly known as the Royal Casket Building, 302 North Main Street, Muskogee, Oklahoma, as a public nuisance under City Code 38-2A14, ratifying authorization for summary abatement procedures under City Code 38-9, suspending purchasing procedures, authorizing the expenditures of stabilization funds for purposes of abatement, as well as provide an opportunity for the owner of the structure to appear and object to the determination of a nuisance in order to abate or take other necessary action.
And just to clarify, Mayor, this is the one that was properly posted in accordance with the Open Meeting Act.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Beesey?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, by way of my presentation is going to be mostly history of what we've gone through to get to this point. It was initially put together prior to the collapse, very timely, and now we've had some additional things that we'll include in here. And if you have questions as we go or at the conclusion of my portion of this, please feel free to stop me and ask, because I know there may be a number of questions related to this as we go through. So what we'll begin with, if you look at your screen, the Royal Casket Building we're all familiar with. This is how it stood prior to any damage. This is a view from the rear of the building. In February of 2016, this is the portion of the building that collapsed. And you can see the difference between what there was and what happened. Once that occurred, code enforcement placarded the building as unsafe and unfit on February 22nd, 2016. And then you can kind of see as a view of what is around it and the utilities that were marked. There were a number of things, especially access because of the viaduct, the buildings adjacent, to get into it, which further complicated the ability to really work on the building. So through our process, code enforcement formally condemned the structure August 1st of 2016. In September and November of, the owner, Jeanette Hunter, whose attorney is here, and at the conclusion of the presentation, will make some comments to council and has some information to provide. Ms. Hunter posted 6 bonds totaling $60,000 in February of 2017 in an attempt to save the structure. She took out a rehabilitation permit. Pursuant to our permit policy, that is put forward to try to make sure that if she doesn't do it, then we in turn will perform that work. In September and November of 2017, the owner supplied engineering documents that the city requested regarding the securing and cleanup of the rear of the building that had collapsed. We weren't addressing the building as a whole because the structural engineer said it was at that point sound, but we did need to secure and clean up the rear. And we granted her 6 months to complete that. After failure to complete the repairs as outlined by the engineering documents, the city requested permission from the bankruptcy court in late 2018 to request the bonds. Ms. Hunter had gone into a Chapter 11 reorganization bankruptcy, and pursuant to that, the city could not just call the bonds because now the bankruptcy court will be basically overseeing any funds that go in or out. We did approach the court after working with her attorney, and she's been very cooperative, her and her counsel, during this process. We were allowed to call those bonds. Calling the bonds in and of themselves was a substantial time and energy effort to get them all through. The City of Muskogee formally revoked the owner's bonds in 2019 after 9 months of correspondence and letters and documentation. And then we actually took action and we partially demolished in the spring of 2020. That was all covered by the bonds, so the city expended no funds. And then finally, when we looked into what we do next, at that point, the city received bids or quotes related to the actual demolition of the entire building. The quotes at that point ranged between $200,000 and $350,000. So that was what we were looking at, and that's kind of why we went into the holding pattern. We did what the engineers said we needed to do, and if you look, this is a view after we were complete. We went in, took it out completely, shored up the walls toward the rear, which were unstable, did a very good job through our contractor, and actually there's a fence which secured that to prevent people from entering into the building. And that's where it was left. Any questions?
Who's the engineer and the person, that said this building was correct?
We had, they were not our engineers, they were her engineers, and I can get that information for you. Councilman Van, I do not have that in front of me.
And Councilman Van, I believe that there may have been as many as 5 engineers that were consulted throughout the process over the years by Ms. Hunter.
They all said this building was sound.
I can't speak to that, but I know that there were repeated engineers that were employed in furtherance of trying to save the building.
In my personal opinion, that building fell in the back there. I sat up here on this council and said, that building needs to come down. Just think, the other night, if somebody wouldn't have been driving down that viaduct, and all those bricks, I've seen the pictures, all those bricks would have fell on cars and stuff because of negligence. That building couldn't have been sound. I don't know if Big Boy, when he come through town the other day, rattled it up, but I don't think so. But like I said, I think to myself personally, that building and all the sorry-looking buildings on Main Street need to come down. That's just my personal opinion. So this won't happen again. But, I just got that one opinion.
Councilor Van, the structural engineering reports that were submitted to the city one was from a company called Matrix. And let's see, that was out of Tulsa. Matrix Architects, Engineers, Planners, Inc. That was out of Tulsa. And then the second one was Snowden Engineering, Structural Consultants, also out of Tulsa. Those are the 2 that were provided to the city back in 2017.
All we know, something went wrong. No matter what they said, something went wrong. That's why we're in the shape we're in now. I guarantee you, now, since this done happened, it's too bad this happened. But we'll do something now. Oh, yeah, we'll do something now. It has to be something like this, and thank God nobody got hurt, but in order for us to move. I'm sorry, I just don't agree with the structural engineer or nothing, because that building should have been down. And I'll say this again, in case one of the other buildings fall down, Muskogee Hotel, the rest of that junk on Main Street fall down, they all should be tore down. Today's the what, 16th of August? Yeah, today is 16th of August. So I'm saying that on the 16th of August, 2021, that all those buildings on South Main, from the viaduct all the way going back to the Muskogee Hotel, need to be tore down. Plus, when you tear this other building down, we need to tear that little Ketchum lumber thing mess down. That some guy told me the other day, oh, it looks good downtown. That's a bunch of junk. It looks like a bunch of junk. I'm done.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And this may be for you. I saw the Royal Casket building on the county sale list, and it was supposed to be coming up for auction.
And if I may, and just so we kind of maintain kind of the presentation, Attorney Webb is going to address that in his portion because that relates directly to his client's interest in the property. and he'll be able to better explain that, I think, when he has the floor, if that's okay.
Sure. All right.
I had a question, Matt.
Yes, ma'am.
You said we called the bond in 2019, or did we call the bond in spring 2020?
Let me look and make sure I have my dates. We got permission from the court in 2018, late 2018, and then we formally revoked them in 2019. Kind of piecemeal, not every bond came in at once because it was 6 different companies. I believe 3 companies, 3 bonds were at one company, then the rest were at different companies, so it was just processing through. So that's where that time period comes into 9 months.
Okay. So the bond that was pulled, did it take care of what was on the emergency demo?
Yes.
Is that what took care
It
of
paid 100%, and we believe there was some overage remaining beyond that.
Okay. And that was the 60,000?
It's 60,000. And the way that was calculated, just so you understand, when we do demolition bonds, our standard is $2 per square foot. It was a 30,000 square foot footprint, which is how we got to 60,000. The problem you run into, and it didn't account for in that bond, is that's for a standard house demolition where it's a single story. When you're talking about a 30,000 square foot, 3-story, 100-year-old building with timber frames and bricks, it does change the nature of it, which is why those bids that came in were between $200,000 and $350,000. Normally, our bonds would cover any structure that we would potentially have to take care of. This one was very unique in that its size and scope.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. BC before he continues?
Well, the next section, I'll turn this over to Tyler Evans. He's going to come up and talk about the response from Friday forward. And then once he concludes, then we'll turn it over to Attorney Webb so he can discuss related to ownership and the tax sale.
Thank you, Mr. BC.
Good afternoon. A lot of these points, City Manager Mike Miller already went over, but I'll go ahead and touch on kind of the timeline of what happened Friday night and into Saturday morning. Muskogee PD officer was on patrol when he heard a sound which sounded like a car crash in the neighborhood of Main and Court Street there. Investigation led to the discovery of fallen bricks there on Main Street and the viaduct. So they went ahead and set up a perimeter around that area. Muskogee PD contacted me, like I say, a little after midnight, advised me what had happened. I said, give me a couple minutes, got to make some phone calls, figure out the status of the building, who owns the building, it's on private property, to kind of get the facts of the detail before we move forward. Approximately about 15 minutes later, they called me back, said it just had collapsed. I then advised city management officials of the situation and what had occurred, and we had all met down there at the building, like I said, right after midnight. This is what it looks like when I arrived. As you see, the bricks that was in Main Street there and on the viaduct, there was some EMS personnel there that was also on scene with police and fire. ODOT, OG&E, and Union Pacific were all contacted and advised of the situation. ODOT and OG&E both arrived on scene that night to help us assess the situation and make the proper decisions moving forward. We immediately started contacting different demolition companies to see who we could get out there immediately, who could get out there that morning, and start getting some professional opinions on the situation. Public Works did a great job. They set up barricades around the area and rerouted traffic away from the hazard and away from the viaduct. We'd left the scene a little after about 2 o'clock in the morning. We decided that we couldn't really do anything further at night besides directing people away from the area, and decided to meet again at 7 o'clock that morning to proceed with a plan to abate the nuisance. After consulting with demolition companies that had shown up that morning, the city had decided that Cook Construction and gave them permission to start abating the nuisance. So this was a shot that was taken early that morning after Cook Construction had set up, like I say, an excavator and their crane. This is another shot of our fire department spraying water onto the area there. And what that does, it keeps the dust down from spreading all over Main Street so our workers can see what they're doing, so the demolition crew can continue working, and also it doesn't cause a breathing hazard to anybody there on the scene, and also precautionary for in case of any types of fires that may come up. And I've just attached some of the photos throughout the day as we made progress on the building. Cook Construction did a fine job. One of the hazards that we had to deal with was those power lines that you can see right below the crane powers most of downtown Muskogee. There are 34,000 volt lines that come through there. We're advised that we cannot take those lines down. We can't remove them. There's simply too much weight, too much power lines, too much telecommunication wires on those particular poles. OG&E found a way to brace those lines. You can tell back there towards the south at the top of the picture, there's an OG&E truck where they braced the power lines, utility poles, to keep those from moving while we were working. So we did have to cut the power off because we were working that close to the building, that close to the lines. But I've got some videos I'd like to share with you that's less than a minute long that shows Cook Construction taking that crane, the wrecking ball, up and over the power lines and working on the other side of it. They did a very good job, very precise job of being able to bring this building down. This project went a lot better than what we could have expected. Here's some additional shots throughout the day. And this was, as of this morning, about 8 o'clock when we've stopped the demolition, stopped the abatement, and what it currently looks like as of right now. Bruce, if you wouldn't mind, sir, can you play that first video? I've got 3 short videos I'd like to show you guys if you don't mind. Here's a shot of them taking down the west wall there that runs along Main Street, and of our fire department dumping water onto, like I say, the bricks and the material to keep down that dust and to keep down the debris from spreading further down the road. You can see the power lines that's running there north to south. He's very gently hitting that facade, hitting the front of that building and bringing those bricks down little by little. And we got, like I said, extremely lucky. He did a great job of not bringing down those power lines. Thank you, sir. Can you play video number 2, please? And this is a video we're going there on the south side. This would be near the viaduct. This is kind of a quick video showing how the nuisance was abated. And one last video. And as you can tell, he just works little by little down through the building. There was no huge chunks that came down. We weren't trying to take a quarter of the building at the time. It was a very precise operation where we took just a little by little, took their time till we got it to a state that was safe to leave it in for the time being. The most amazing thing is that out of this entire incident, nobody got hurt. Nothing. There was no property or equipment that got damaged, to my knowledge, besides the building itself. And a lot of thanks has to go out to our Public Works Department, our Fire Department, Police Department that made all that possible. I'd be happy to answer any questions, should you have any.
Do we have any questions from Mr. Evans?
If I could be recognized?
Yes.
I would just like to thank you guys. You did an amazing camera work. I have a business within that block. I had already gone home. A little bit before that, I got a call, as I always do when something goes on downtown. But by the time I got downtown, Mr. Miller was here. Our first responders were here. It's just amazing how quickly we responded. It's a horrible chain of events that led to the building collapsing. Obviously, bad deal, but how we responded was just amazing. Our staff, the city people, the first responders, fire department, police department, I think is just amazing. And then watching Cook Construction, they had 3 different companies that showed up that morning, and I mean, talk about dangerous. What those guys were doing, going up in there with that track hoe, was absolutely phenomenal, extremely dangerous. And with Kelly sitting in that crane, as Tyler has said, working behind those lines, it is, I was amazing watching those guys. Reminded me of when we had the flood. I was out checking on some farmland that we have and wound up in the port and got to watch those guys running, the same crew running around again, saving our water. Where our water comes in at the port. It was amazing watching these guys work, and the fact that they were down there at the crack of dawn the next day, literally with this equipment, and saying, here's what we need to do, here's how we got to do it, this is what's going to happen. But with Kelly in that crane, when he was hitting the top of that thing, guys, there was a big chance that whole building could have pancaked out toward that crane, and I mean, it was, we're very lucky to have those people. So I'm very thankful. Thank everyone that showed up and helped. That was an amazing work by everyone involved. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
I admit those were good operators. That was a good operator. He was a good operator. He knew what he was doing. Pull that picture back up if you don't mind, Tyler, one more time.
The videos or the pictures, sir?
The picture just while you just took off. They had the building right there beside it.
Yeah. Give me just a second. I'll get IT to pull that back up. The PowerPoint, I believe.
Some people are professional, some people are not. Those structural engineers, to me, they weren't professional. That's just me. Took 5 years, though. Right there.
That one?
Well, that's okay. But I was there. That one right there. That's the one that gets me. You know, while we're doing this process of tearing this building down right there, sitting mess right there beside to the north of it, that's Ketchum Old, the lumber company I was talking about earlier. Now that looks very good downtown in Muskogee, don't it? Beautiful. But that right there, we need to be working on next to try to get some of that mess down, so to make our downtown look better. But like I say, I pray, I'm like Councilman Reynolds, I praise the people that worked so diligently to tear that building down, and our firemen and our police officers, you know, and you, Tyler, thank y'all done a very excellent job.
Thanks, sir.
As far as those structural engineers that said this wasn't bad, 5 years, it's been 5 years since that building has collapsed in the back. They was wrong. That's all I got to say. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Van.
Further question, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Miller.
I do believe Mr. Webb is here representing the building owner. I'd like to ask him to come forward, and he had some things he wanted to address the council with.
Mr. Webb.
Mayor Coleman, thank you for allowing me to be here. My first time to be able to address you since you took office. For those of us that were born in Muskogee and may not still call Muskogee home, we're very excited to see that happen. Very excited for the changes that we hope to see in the future. I'm going to hand something out really quickly to the council. This will be for your table.
Thank you.
I think that I have one for the mayor.
And we'll share.
Just as a point of clarification, I did want to say that I believe that the bankruptcy for Ms. Hunter was finalized on or about May of 2020. But for the pandemic, I expect that that property would have been sold in the normal course of tax delinquent sales by the county in June of 2020. When that sale was canceled, that property rolled over for sale, in June of 2021. And Councilman Van, let me just say I appreciate your comments regarding both your opinions and in particular in regards to public safety. It is a balancing act between conservancy and preservation, condemnation and safety. Water and age are not friends of aging buildings and infrastructure. Unfortunately, a lot can accelerate the aging and deterioration of a building, which at that point was 116 years of age, and when it came down was 121. But I just want to acknowledge, I understand that that is a fine line that I don't envy that you and other civic leaders across our country are having to deal with, as neglected buildings are still standing, and they may not have the funds or the resources available to be rehabbed to a state that would make them both inhabitable or safe. So with that said, before you, you guys will see some statutes that are at the top of your packet. There's 3 statutes there. The first one provides that when a property, there's delinquent taxes that are owed on a property for a certain period of time, in this case under Oklahoma law it's 3 years, that property will then be sold. The second, which is a single page, and that's Title 68, Oklahoma Statute Section 3125. It provides that the county treasurer shall proceed to sale such real estate. And the third document, Section 3129 of Title 68 of the Oklahoma Statutes, provides that if there's no bid for that property equal to or greater than the sum so required, the county treasurer shall bid off the same in the name of the county. In this instance, that would be Muskogee County. You'll notice there's twice in 2 of those statutes the use of the word shall. It is not discretionary in that instance. While there may be provisions in the first statute I provided for exemptions, those exemptions are exclusively capable of being sought after by the property owner, which Ms. Hunter did not do. I've had a chance to speak with the acting county treasurer. She's affirmed for me Ms. Hunter did not remediate her back taxes that were owed. The next document you will see is a notice of sale, or notice of resale, dated 5/22/21. That was provided to me this afternoon by the acting county treasurer in PDF format. That provides, and if you were to go through there, it would provide that this particular property at 302 North Main was listed for sale and was to be sold in June. The next document you will see is a July 30th, 2021 document entitled "The Notice to Sell County Property Acquired at Resale." This property at 302 North Main is not listed on that. The third document, which was provided simply as an Excel document, it was not provided as a PDF. The other 2 that I just noticed to you were provided by the Treasurer's Office as PDF documents. The Excel document is representative of what supposedly was actually sold, the properties that were listed for sale at the Civic Center on June 14th. I have over here a list of other documents that purport to be the list of properties that were for sale on June 14th as provided to individuals that were at the Civic Center. I have not authenticated those. 302 North Main is on that document. It is not on the Excel document that I was provided today by the County Treasurer's Office. I'm not trying to in any way assert that there is anything improper that occurred, and certainly the council is aware of when our acting county treasurer was approved by the council, and it was in very recent days, and it was subsequent to June 14th. After affirming that indeed my client, Ms. Hunter, did not remediate the back taxes, which would have removed it properly from the list of resale items. You may recall in the Phoenix that there were over 600 properties initially. By the time it came to the date of resale, we were under 400. My client did not remediate her back taxes that would have caused that property to be removed from the sale. At that point, Ms. Sumter represented to me, and I believe she's represented to Mr. Tucker on behalf of the city, or represented to Attorney Tucker, who was appearing on behalf of the city, that further inquiries need to be directed to District Attorney Orville Loge. That's as far as we've gotten. With that understanding, it is the documents before you would assert, and it's a doctrine that we would characterize as res ipsa loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. This property would appear to have been sold, but we don't know to whom it was sold. The 2 documents that we have that we believe are representative of what was posted. Both the notice of the July 30th notice, which you can pull up on the county treasurer's website today, and the May 22nd notice, which I believe was published at that time. Property was offered for sale on one date. It was not redeemed by the county on the other. It would be presumed to have been sold in the interim. It does not appear that documentation is currently accessible either to us or the city of Muskogee. On behalf of Ms. Hunter, and Ms. Hunter herself has been in communication with Mr. Miller. I've been in communication both with Mr. Miller and Mr. Tucker's office throughout the weekend. They provided me with documentation for my client to sign, and we are prepared to sign that with one Scrivener's error correction so that the city may proceed. It does assert that we believe that we may not be the record owner of the property. But if we are, that we do not object to the city going in to proceed, and we're not objecting to the nuisance declaration of the property as it now stands. Were we to be deemed owner of the property, it is our understanding based upon communications from 2020 with Dan Hurd that there may be as much as $18,000 still existing out of the bonds that were previously pulled. Whether or not those were remediated back to the bond company, we would have to follow up. And I'm prepared to take any questions.
We have questions for council on tonight.
I'm just glad to see the building come down, sir.
Thank you.
I'm very confused. How can someone either had to pay the taxes on that building, or someone bought that building?
Or someone pulled it for reasons that I don't want to speculate about.
Well,
it would appear from my reading of the statute there would not be a reason for it to have been pulled nor discretion to do so. But Ms. Hunter is a business owner in this town, accepting that building, and we wanted to be here today to provide explanation and to provide whatever documentation we can to the city. As I said, both Mr. Miller and the city attorney's office have been in touch with us throughout the weekend, and I appreciate both their professionalism as we work through this and their understanding as we've tried to get to the bottom of exactly where we stood as a potential property owner and potentially where the city stands in recouping some of the expense of the responsibility that you and many others are stepping up to endure.
Any other? Go ahead,
I had a
I'm sorry.
question. I'm sorry. So did I understand you correctly, sir? Are you saying at this time that Jeanette is not the owner of the property, being that she didn't pay, let me finish, she didn't pay her taxes, so it went into the sale, and from records showing, it looks like no one bought it at one point, then it looked like it disappeared at another point, and now we're back where we are today?
Correct. And I understand why the city, both through Mr. Miller and the city attorney's office, reached out to Ms. Hunter, because based upon the records that were accessible to them, and certainly on Saturday, she is the record owner of the property. I wanted to enlighten the council and the city of Muskogee as to what I believe has happened with the property. There are questions I cannot answer as to why it appears to have not been sold, or if it was sold, to whom it was sold. But at this time, I'm here to address what I can on behalf of Ms. Hunter.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Further questions? If not, we will, thank you so much. We will now go to Mr. Miller and Mr. Tucker, who will give us further direction on how we need to proceed.
So I've got a couple of things here, and then I'd like to ask Mr. Stewart to give some details about next steps, because we all want to know what happens next with the property. So our next steps are to identify funds for abatement of the property. Our city code allows us to use our restricted reserves for emergency situations, for life, health, or public safety issues for which no existing appropriation exists. This situation, in which there's debris near a viaduct of a state highway, qualifies as such an emergency. We have called this emergency meeting night. That will allow us to authorize use of our restricted reserve and allow us to move forward with abatement as quickly as possible. I'm going to ask Mr. Stewart to come forward because he's been working with potential contractors and vendors about next steps, about how quickly we can go from where we are today to having all the debris removed and it just being a clear open field with no debris. So I'll let Mr. Stewart kind of walk us through that process.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes, Mayor and Council. Start off by telling you that because the city is doing this, we are going to get our own demolition permit. So Ms. Callahan is going to assist us with that. Jeff Reeves in Public Works is going to, which he's already done. We've started researching contractors on who can go ahead and finish this job up. Cook is invested somewhat in it, so we are looking at them as well as several other contractors. One of the issues that we face is asbestos evaluation. So we need to get an asbestos evaluation done on the site and get it approved through ODEQ to go ahead and remove it. That will take some time to do. We anticipate having it done by next Monday. We're trying to get it done as quickly as possible, and it could be that we can get it done quicker, but we are kind of looking at Monday as the furthest date to actually start removing that debris. We are going to ask that all the material be removed from the rear, and we've got some roads back there that are accessible to the site, so we're going to insist that it be removed from the rear, and we're also going to insist that they supply us with a haul route before this starts. All the material coming from that site is going to have to go to the landfill. All the debris that goes from that site will go to the landfill. We are not going to start any of this at all with any contractor until a notice to proceed is given, and we will sit down with the city manager and address that once Jeff and I have determined which contractor that we're going to recommend that moves forward with this, and we hope to do that rather soon, very possibly in the morning. We are kind of concerned that in the removal of it Saturday and with it falling Friday night, that there may be some structural damage to the bridge, so we're having the bridge evaluated. We've got a structural engineer coming in to look at it. We don't feel like it was, but to be safe, we're still going to have it evaluated. And by the way, that bridge was due for a evaluation in September anyway, so we're just moving that forward. One of the concerns that the railroad had with us on Saturday morning was they were as concerned about the building as they were about the bridge, and if the removal of that building would cause any damage to that bridge, because that bridge is directly over their rail. So, and when they do that evaluation, the railroad will have to work with the inspecting engineers to make sure there's a flag man available to get all that done. I think I've touched on all the points that we have right now. Hopefully we'll have this resolved first thing in the morning for a contractor, and we'll get the notice to proceed out just as quickly as possible. We'll visit with the manager on that.
Any questions for Mr. Stewart?
Mr. Mayor, might I be recognized?
Yes.
You said the contractor that tore this building down where it is right now is Cook Construction?
Yes.
That's the one that need to be on the job.
Cook is very good. You know, that's
The one to know what they're doing.
yes.
Now also, on the next building, Old Ketchum Lumber, y'all need to get a real structure engineer to make sure this building here, it don't fall. The one next to it, the Old Ketchum Lumber building I'm looking at, you said you're gonna do the viaduct, you might as well do that old building there and see if there's any damage. If it is, it needs to come down.
We
It's
understand.
my opinion.
Mike, I just had a question. Do we have room out there in the landfill? We know we had some concerns.
So that was one of the issues that we discussed with we've already had that conversation with the landfill, and they can't accept that for us. So, and by the way, we are working on that landfill issue as well, and I'm assuming that'll be a future agenda item.
Thank you.
Further questions for Mr. Stewart? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller.
So, Mr. Mayor, want to be remiss. I've talked about a lot of the people that did a lot of work over the weekend, extra long hours, not much sleep. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Mr. Tucker, who was giving me very good legal advice at 1 a.m. on Saturday morning. And he has prepared an emergency resolution that will allow us to move forward with all the things we've talked about as quickly as possible. Use of our reserve funds, waiving our purchasing policy strictly just for this particular project, so that we can get it done quickly and efficiently. I'll let him speak to that. But our path forward is to look at this resolution, adopt it if you wish, and we can move forward quickly with the remediation and abatement of this nuisance.
Mr. Tucker.
Mayor, members of the council, just a couple of points. We have provisions within our code which define certain public nuisances. One of them meets the criteria of what we have here when we have a building that is in such a state of repair that it creates a danger. And so in this case, when we have a building that has collapsed into the street, we have that met. Additionally, we have a procedure in our Code of Ordinances which provides for summary abatement. For that summary abatement to take into account to remedy a public nuisance, it has to be a nuisance that is of grave and imminent danger. And so, as Mr. Miller has articulated, he made that finding, which the code provides is within his purview. So, additionally, what that does is trigger notice provisions to the purported owner, and I say purported owner based upon what Mr. Webb has said here today. And so the positive thing is either we have a purported owner who we know and we're working with, or it's the County of Muskogee, in which case we can also work with them. And so based on my conversations with them, there's not a third option within that mix. So moving back to the resolution itself, so it also not only finds the existence that the nuisance is that this is a public nuisance, but that is also one that is imminently needs to address. Finally, we did have certain procedures that are required to be articulated before any funds within the city stabilization account can be expended. One is situations that are emergency in nature for which there is no other allocation, and that is an instance which we have today. Further, and what I draw your attention to is for that to be authorized by you, it does require a 2/3 majority. So for this resolution to pass, which includes the provision relating to stabilization funds, as well as waiving competitive bidding, i.e. suspending our purchasing policy, that does require super emergency for this to pass. So with that, I do recommend approval of Resolution 2871, and I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Do we have any conversation or discussion for the manager or the attorney, or do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
Move for approval along with having or do we need to do super emergency as a second vote?
You don't need an emergency. It just requires a super majority.
Okay.
So 6 members to pass.
Second.
Do we know about what the cost will be on this?
So I do think that the bids that we had earlier, the quotes that we had earlier of $200,000 to $350,000 probably are still accurate, but we'll have to. That's part of what we're trying to determine right now through our quick process.
When are the bids due?
So right now, we are not a regular bid process would be a 21-day plus process. Right now, we're contacting all the vendors that we know of that can do this work to try and get them to give us information. You heard Mr. Stewart saying we'd like to decide as early as tomorrow so that we can start on the DEQ process and all those things. So we've been working on talking to vendors already, knowing that we're hoping to get the approval to spend the money as soon as possible, but this is the legwork that we have to do. In this case, we're really getting kind of quotes versus a solid firm bid like we would get through our standard bidding process, because we don't want to wait 21 days plus for that to happen.
Mr. Miller, you might want to point out to some of the people that have previously bid or folks you're talking to, there is a lot less of that building to tear down now. The hard work has been knocked out of the park.
That is a great point, and there is a lot to haul away still, and obviously we are trying to get as many people involved in the conversation as possible to get even as competitive a bid as possible, or a competitive price as possible.
Possibly out of the park now.
Yeah.
We could maybe get that down to.
Well, we're very hopeful, because again, this is not our first choice on how to spend taxpayer funds.
Exactly.
And Mr. Miller, remind the council approximately how much is in the stabilization fund now.
We have more than $7 million in the stabilization fund right now.
We are
approximately. Let me give you a ballpark, but yes,
we are solvent in that area.
Yes, this is will not put us in harm's way.
Yes. We have a motion and a second.
Let's don't do this like we do on some of these jobs up here at the city. I know the low bid, we'll grab it all. That's the best bid. telling you.
Well, by adopting this resolution, we're allowed to pick the best and the quickest and all of those things.
Well, you know who the best is. I already done told you.
Well, I always listen when the council
I already
talks.
done told you. You don't listen sometimes up here, but I done already told you. Cook Construction is the best one because look at where they got it now. And I won't say this thing, and I'm gonna shut up. I just look at this and I just think of that picture they brought up with all them bricks on that viaduct and all in the street, and nobody was coming through but God. That's all I can say. But God. We were blessed.
Agreed.
He don't come when you want him, but he's always on time. And it's time for that building to come down without nobody being hurt. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Excuse me, Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van. Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes, the item passes. That meeting is concluded. We will now call to order the special call meeting for the Muskogee City Council for August 16th, 2021. Roll call.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Jamie Stout.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs. Alex Reynolds. Stephanie Morgan.
Here.
Tracy McGee.
Here.
Tracy Hoos.
Item number 1.
Consider an executive session to discuss and take possible action on the following. A, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss the employment, terms, evaluation, hiring, appointment, demotion, disciplining, resignation, or termination of City Manager Mike Miller, and if necessary, take appropriate action in open session. B, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss the employment, terms, evaluation, hiring, appointment, demotion, disciplining, resignation, or termination of City Attorney Roy D. Tucker, and if necessary, take appropriate action in open session. C, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss the employment, terms, evaluation, hiring, appointment, demotion, disciplining, resignation, or termination of City Clerk Tammy L. Tracy, and if necessary, take appropriate action in open session. D, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss the employment, terms, evaluation, hiring, appointment, demotion, disciplining, resignation, or termination of Municipal Judge Tony Bradley Smith, and if necessary, take appropriate action in open session.
We have a motion to go into executive session.
We need to open the door first.
No, we need a motion to go into, who closed my door? Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Stout.
I make a motion now.
Second.
Mr. Tucker, should we say motion with the door open?
Yes, let's do that.
The door has been opened. Now do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we go into executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session properly. Roll call.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes. All of those who do not need to be in this executive session, we ask that you excuse yourself at this time. Thank you. We will now reconvene from executive session. Roll call.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Jamie Stout.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Here.
Alex Reynolds.
Here.
Stephanie Morgan.
Here.
Tracy McGee.
Here.
Tracy Hoos.
Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 1A, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, the council did convene an executive session to discuss the employment terms, evaluation, hiring, appointment, demotion, disciplining, resignation, or termination of City Manager Mike Miller. After discussing Mr. Miller's preliminary evaluation in executive session and agreeing to continue that based on request for additional information and meaning that it will be completed later on, no action is necessary at this time. Item 1B, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, the council convened an executive session to discuss the employment, terms, evaluation, hiring, appointment, demotion, disciplining, resignation, or termination of City Attorney Roy D. Tucker. After completing the preliminary evaluation for Mr. Tucker as well, but requesting further information in order to complete the evaluation, which will be completed at a later time. No action is necessary. Item 1C, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, the council convened an executive session to discuss the employment terms evaluation, hiring, appointment, demotion, disciplining, resignation, or termination of City Clerk Tammy L. Tracy. Again, after completing a preliminary evaluation and requesting some additional information, the council has decided to complete the evaluation at a later time once that information is presented. So at this time, no action is necessary. Item 1D, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, the council convened an executive session to discuss the employment, terms, evaluation, hiring, appointment, demotion, disciplining, resignation, or termination of Municipal Judge Tony Bradley Smith. After again conducting a preliminary evaluation and requesting further information, no action, I believe, is necessary at this time. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Thank you, council, for your patience on tonight. Those were the last items for this meeting. We are adjourned.